not to sound cold-hearted or anything, but who is someone who died and had it coming to them. Victoriano Alvarez. There is an island off the coast of Mexico called Clipperton Island. In 1914, the island had a population of 100 with resupply ships coming every 2 months. When the Mexican Revolution and WW1 broke out, the ships stopped coming. By 1917 there were only 15 women and children and 1 man, Victoriano Alvarez, left alive. Many died from scurvy, while others drowned attempting to chase a passing ship for help. Being the only man left on the island, Victoriano Alvarez declared himself the king and seized all the remaining weapons on the island. He then began his tyrannical rule and would rape and murder the remaining survivors. Eventually he was killed by Teresa Rendon, who was one of his favorite victims. Shortly after this, an American ship passed by and rescued the remaining 4 women and 7 children who survived and told their story. When asked about Alvarez, the survivors claimed he had died from scurvy like the others. 2 sailors took interest to their story and investigated the island. They witnessed the horrors, making the connections to their story as they went. When they came across Alvarez's body, laying in a pool of his own blood, they exchanged no words, gave each other a nod and moved on. It was visited by ornithologist Ken Stager of the Los Angeles County Museum in 1958, appalled at the depredations visited by feral pigs upon the island's brown booby and masked booby colonies, reduced to 500 and 150 birds, respectively. Stager procured a shotgun and killed all 58 pigs. Hell yeah, who needs assault rifles for them feral hogs? Deputy number 1, will you look at that? Old man asshole fell from the 2nd story down the stairs, broke both arms and legs, looks like, messed his face up real bad too. What a tragedy. Deputy number 2, new in the job, but Dave, this is a 1-story house. Deputy Dave, yep, sure is a shame. If he had one of those baby gates at the top of the stairs he might not have fallen, probably drunk again. Deputy number 2, oh, Dave, there's not a 2nd story, and he's laying on the back porch. What are you talking about? Deputy Dave, well Steve, it's like this. Either the old man fell down a flight of stairs from the 2nd floor and died, or that lovely, sweet old woman in the living room killed him. That sweet old woman is 63. If, and that's a big if, she killed him, and got convicted, she would die in prison. On the other hand, if that old asshole that everybody knew was an abusive drunk fell down and got killed, well then that sweet old lady can collect on the life insurance and draw his pension and go live with her daughter in Florida. Now tell me Steve, which of those sounds like the happy ending to this story? Deputy Steve, well damn, Dave, I didn't even notice those stairs over there. Boy, I must have been distracted looking at all the blood. Who do I call? The medical examiner. Deputy Dave, nope, call Charlie at the funeral home. Tell him we've got a special case for him. He'll know what you mean. Dude, I'm sure the same thing happened with my grandparents. She's old enough, but the cops knew something wasn't right but just had a chat in the corner with each other and clearly decided it wasn't worth the effort. I was there and had to find the body and all that shit. I'm sure that old bitch did it. He was a hateful, abusive, racist, drunk, weak and fail fuck, and maybe she felt it was his time to pay for decades of abuse. My grandpa is a similar story. Rapped my 16-year-old grandma and got her pregnant and ran away, of course. Did that to several girls, always targeting girls like my grandma who didn't have much of a support network. Indeed, her piece of shit parents prevented her from getting an abortion by locking her up, then kicked her out, pregnant at 16 from rape and too late to do anything but give birth. And well, one day he got mistaken on a girl's lack of support system. He then had a terrible tractor accident that involved the tractor of the girl's uncle tragically driving over his body with the uncle at the wheel. Same, nothing happened. I'll tell this story for my late best friend. His father had mentally abused him for a long time in his teens, basically all through high school and before. It was so bad that at one point his father called into the school and said my friend was going to shoot up the place. which he would never do. My friend had been grounded for a whole year once, if not multiple times. A couple of years ago, they found his father dead in his chair, alone and bloated. To this day, I had never seen my friend more happy than when he found out his father had died alone. My piece of shit stepdad kept groping and fingering me when I was 9 seconds old. That went on for a few years whenever I was left alone with him. When I was 12 he tried to get me to have sex. I was terrified and said number. I guess he wanted me to say okay, and when I didn't, he started panicking and locked me in the basement a few times. I was terrified and wanted to speak up but didn't, for all the reasons kids don't speak up when they should. It was 1981. My stepdad left on a business trip and I prayed to God that he would please just make him die. A few days later my stepdad had a heart attack and died. That was one of the best days of my life. My stepfather used to tell me a story about a buddy of his that would always swerve to hit animals when he was driving. Sadistic fuck that just wanted to kill the squirrels and raccoons running across the street. So one day, this dude swerved to hit a dog. One of the dog's ribs punctured his tire. He lost control of the truck, and he wrapped it around a tree. In India, over a decade ago, some scum was going around raping women in one area. As we can expect, nothing was done. The rapist was some kind of gangster and many of his victims were Dalits untouchables. Police told the woman who dared to report it that they were whores and adulterers. One day, a very cunning woman threatened to blow them up when he and his gang attacked her house. The gang was run out of town and an angry mob burned the rapist's house down. The rapist handed himself over to police for protection. Over 200 women arrived at the courthouse. When the rapist joked about one of the victims being a prostitute, the police laughed. That was it. The mob of women attacked him, led by the victim he laughed at. They threw powder in his face and stabbed him at least 70 times. His penis was cut off. When police tried to arrest a few of the women, every woman in the area claimed responsibility. They still arrested a few women, but they were let off. Link to the story: https://healthit'sinteresting.com/AskReddit. Amen. Fuck this guy and his whole church family. I put together an event to shield a fallen soldier's family from these scumbags back in 2011. I had so many people interested in helping. It turned into a logistical nightmare, but we managed. Ended up having tens of thousands of people descend from all over the world. The Phelps showed up in a rented car with 3 people and their signs. The 500 Harley riders, mostly patriotic guard, made sure they stayed surrounded and unheard for the entire 1 minute they stayed. The rest of the day turned into a giant memorial for that soldier. I know it comes across as patting myself on the back, but it truly is one of the best things I've ever done in my life, helping that family. Local asshole of my small hometown. Dude always swerved to hit animals. I don't think he ever succeeded in killing anyone's pets, but he fucking tried. Well, someone was outside with their dog. The owner goes inside to grab a drink. The dog is well behaved and it's sitting in the yard next to the road. Asshole comes flying down the road in his loud ass lifted truck. The owner hears him, grabs his shotgun next to the front door, and heads outside right as the asshole misses his dog and spins out across the yard. As he tries to run over the dog a second time, the owner blasts away, hitting the guy in the face the first shot. He keeps firing, hitting the front, side, and rear of the truck. The truck keeps going and runs into the ditch on the other side of the road. Asshole survived the shot, missing a significant portion of his face, lived for 6 hours in critical condition, and died in surgery. Fucking scumbag deserved it. Judge ruled in favor of the owner with no penalties or fines or anything. Fun fact: the brother was caught by police taking a shit on his asshole brother's grave. They released him lol. His family was actually decent people, but he was such utter scum, he deserved it. I'm so glad you see him as deserving of death and hope you're healing well. My pedophile grandfather died of colon cancer and I'm also glad. He molested my aunt the most, 11 seconds, my mother, myself, and some cousins. but my aunt developed such severe Stockholm's that she had a talk with him and forgave him before he died. I've slowly watched her become a shell over the last 15 or so years. She's so obsessed that when the rest of us came forward, she called us liars. Every woman that seeks actual healing feels like a blessing to me because it's difficult to watch my aunt physically destroy herself because of him. None of these men are worthy of our light. Richard Huckle, also known as Britain's worst pedophile, which is saying a lot when you think about it, posed as a photographer for charities and religious organizations in Asia in order to get close to children and eventually groom and rape them. He was also involved in the sex trafficking business where he helped sell many of the children into sex slavery, where he also filmed and distributed CP, a true monster. Turns out, dude was capital B brutally tortured and murdered in prison in the absolute worst way possible in 2019. The details are way too graphic to write down here, but man, he got what was coming and then some. My husband abused me physically, sexually, emotionally, mentally, and financially for 18 years before I finally had the courage to leave. Was a severe heroin addict. Literally could not overestimate what a non-existent father he was. He made the separation hell. Just every trashy, deadbeat that thing you've ever heard of, he did. Became a severe alcoholic, tried to get me fired. He was unemployed for 2 seconds at this point. Threatened suicide repeatedly, multiple arrests, car crashes, more physical abuse, drug dealer girlfriends, got severely in debt, etc. etc. Then he filed a bullshit protective order against me asking that the kids be removed by police force from the only parent they've ever had to live on the floor of his 3 drug dealer siblings' apartment. He died 3 days after filing that. Drove himself into a roundabout with a 2.5 blood alcohol level. Honest to God, when I woke up at 5 a.m. and saw all the missed calls, all I could think was, please just let this finally be the end. Been grateful every day since that. It was the only good parenting move he ever made was removing himself from their lives by death. This is how I feel about my dad. He was all of the things you mentioned about your husband, except he didn't do heroin. And he went out of his way to make life a living hell for my mom after she left him. The only memories I have of him are violent ones. He fell asleep in a parking garage with his car running and died of carbon monoxide poisoning when I was like 4. My mom was so relieved and all the bad stuff just ended instantly. I've had people tell me my whole life they were sorry for my loss when they find out he died, but I never felt that way. I feel like if he hadn't died, things would have probably been a lot worse for us, and I wouldn't have put it past him to be the kind of person to have killed us all and then himself one day. Charlize Theron's father. On June 21, 1991, Theron's father, an alcoholic, threatened both teenage Charlize and her mother while drunk, physically attacking her mother and firing a gun at both of them. Theron's mother retrieved her own handgun, shot back and killed him. The shooting was legally adjudged to have been self-defense, and her mother faced no charges. 8 weeks ago in Ireland, a group of 3 well-known criminals were speeding down a motorway against the flow of traffic. They eventually crashed, setting the car on fire and dying in flames. They had targeted the elderly, breaking into their homes and stealing their life savings. Since the deaths of the 3 prolific criminals, there has been a significant decrease in burglaries in the area. https://m.independent.e/irishnews/crime/number of burglaries in Leinster plummets after deaths of 3 criminals in N7 crash 408594115.html. Now this I can get on board with. No sympathy whatsoever for people like that. I found this other article which goes into more detail about what a total waste of oxygen these people were, and how their scumbag relatives and friends hijacked and spoiled one of the funerals with disgusting behavior. https://www.irishtimes.com/news/Ireland/Irish News/silence Intel Act about trio S deaths in N7 crash. H tells its own story. 1.46300081. Back in the 90s, I read a newspaper article about a man who called his girlfriend at work and told her he was going to kill her dog. He took the dog outside and started to beat it with the butt of his gun. The gun went off, and he was shot in the head and died. The dog suffered a few injuries from the beating, but got better and lived. I laughed hysterically at that one. My boss was appalled at my glee at this man's death, but seriously, fuck that guy. I like this one. Clement Vallandigham was a well-known Northern Democrat who campaigned for states' rights during the Civil War. In 1863, Vallandigham was convicted of treason for his speeches attacking the administration of President Lincoln. He was banished to the South, where he continued to voice his political views. After the war, Vallandigham became a lawyer. In his last appearance in the courtroom, he represented a client on trial for murder. The accused man's defense was that the victim had drawn his own gun in a fashion that caused it to fire, killing himself. To prove the defense argument, Vallandigham demonstrated the victim's method of drawing a gun using the loaded evidence gun as his prop. The firearm went off, and he lost his life but proved his case. My grandmother. My father got my mother pregnant really young and married her, and ended up having 4 kids together by the time she was 21 and ended up separating by the time I was born. Basically my dad took her away and kept pumping babies out and made her stay home, so my mother didn't have a HS diploma and couldn't get a job and basically had no support whatsoever besides my dad. This got my grandmother really mad and she always stated my mother ruined my father's life. My father was a piece of shit and raped women and was a party guy and never even took care of us, while talking very bad about my mother. There was 4 of us. My older brother and sister were the favorites cause me and my other sister looked exactly like my mom, so my grandmother hated us. I distinctly remember my grandmother telling me when I was 8 years old to get away from her cause I was disgusting and no one wanted me. She'd often call me a little ugly boy, and even called me a trash disposal. I never understood it. She would take my older siblings to bingo night, take them out to the mall, buy them clothes and snacks, while my other sister and I were so mistreated by her. She even told me once my mom had AIDS and to not touch her cause I'd get AIDS too. Another comment I distinctly remember is my grandmother telling me to always have more than one boyfriend cause then I can use them each for something different. I would tell my father how mean Grandma Blanca was and to please not make me go over to her house, but he never cared. No one ever cared. She ended up dying in 2005. She was about to get in the shower and had a heart attack on the toilet while taking a shit. While everyone was devastated, I didn't even feel an ounce of sadness or remorse. This lady who had been mean to me my whole life had a heart attack while shitting, so it felt like karma to me, lol. To this day my dad hates how I never even told him I was sorry his mom died, and I've tried explaining to him how much damage she did to me mentally, but my father isn't any better than her, so I've also cut him out of my life. I felt bad for my half-sister cause my dad named her Blanca after his mom and his sister went apeshit saying some brat from the Philippines has no right to have their mom's name, and the only thing I still think of is how it's a shame how no one else saw my grandmother for who she really was. I had a bully in high school 2 years ahead of me. We were on the lacrosse team together. He used to beat me with lacrosse sticks, shove me in lockers, whip lacrosse balls at my head without a helmet on, verbally abuse me daily. You know, bully stuff. I told my parents about it, who told his parents about it, who promptly said I needed to man up and just take it because boys will be boys. Anyway, he and his entire family died when their private jet crashed into the side of a mountain. Good riddance to all of them. There's a man in our town who died of COVID earlier in the year. He's been under suspicion for literally decades for various fraud and business sketchiness, not to mention abusing his stepdaughters. Oh, and he was a suspect of a girl who went missing back in the 90s and they've yet to solve her case. He literally got caught during a sting that was trying to catch people who were soliciting minors on the internet. Still never had a single charge stick on anything. When he died, the entire town basically was like, finally. Also, when my grandmother dies I'll show up long enough to make sure she's really in the box and kick some dirt on it, at least if her evilness doesn't make her outlive us all.